Alright, it's just started recording. So,
Yeah.
do you mean the average of the 3 trials?
Yes, to find if VO2 fell within the thresholds.
Okay. What do you mean if VO2 fell within the thresholds? VO2 at which point?
So you see, table 15, slide 15 and 16. They said that they had enough. Stacey said that they made another graph to find the thresholds, and which is circled here. VT1 was 51 point something, and then VT2 was 57 point something, and then they found if their VO2 max fell within those two
Okay.
pots.
Yeah, okay. Alright, so this figure basically says that, at the start of the trial within, what is this, after the first kilometer or after the first 25%, the exercise intensity surpassed VT1. And it continued rising, but a little bit more gradual, and then it started to plateau, and the intensity hovered around VT2, which was close to 57.5 mils per kilogram per minute. According to this figure, I'm not sure whether that's exactly correct, but according to this figure, that's what it means. So this says that for most of the trial, the participants, they actually stayed at around VT2. Is that right? Is that what?
It sounds right.
Just looking at this figure, this is what I can tell. So this is okay. This is a good comparison. The only thing is you need to have the average of the 3 distance trials and the average of the 3 time trials. Do you guys know how to do that, or do you want me to show you?
You might have to show us, because Stacey tried to find. That wasn't the problem. The problem was finding I think maybe the VT as an average.
Okay.
It's in the data, isn't it? It's in the. We don't have to find the VT. It's in the, what is that called, demographics.
Correct. I'll show you how to find the averages for each of the 3 trials. I'll just share my screen. Alright, can you see the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, Caroline, like you said, we don't need to calculate the VTs because they're all here already, which is great. So for the 14 participants, you do need to find an average, which I believe you've already done so. So average of all the VT1 and average of VT2. So average of VT2 was about 55. So that was that's quite accurate based on what Stacey has calculated, and she's disappeared again, but it's okay. At least we have this recorded. So then let's go to the trials itself. Alright, so first of all, I'm going to delete this and start from scratch. First of all, I need to find out what is the average for the 14 participants. So I'm going to type in equals to average and select all the participants in the first split. So that was the VO2 for the first split, and I just need to click and drag this formula across. That gives me the averages for all the 8 splits. Everyone following up to this point? Yep. Still good, Caroline?
Yes, I'm. Stacey, can you hear them? Guys, wait. Sam, sorry, can you talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
If I explain the whole table, or
Okay, I'm just gonna keep going so this is recorded. Let me just finish with this explanation. So this is the averages for the 14 participants across 8 splits in distance trial 1. So what I can do is just click and drag across these formula cells, and I'm gonna copy this. So I'm just gonna press Ctrl C on my keyboard. It copies the formulas, and I'll paste it in DT2, and I'll do that for DT3, and also just do it for TTs as well. So now I've got the averages for all the 6 trials, okay, 3 DTs and 3 TTs. Then now I can also find out what's the average of the block of 3 distance trials. So what I can do is to just copy all these averages here, this one, and that one there, and paste it on a separate sheet so that I can see all the values. So I'm just going to add a new sheet here. Alright, and then I'm going to copy this and paste it here. And if you just press Ctrl V, you get an error because you're actually copying the formula and it doesn't make sense now. So I'm just going to undo that and copy again these values, and this time I'm just going to be pasting the values, paste values, so the calculated values. Alright, and that's for DT1. So this is DT1. I'm going to put DT2 here and DT3 here. Okay, so I'll go to DT2, do the same thing, Control C, paste special, paste values, and do it for DT3. Control C, paste values. So now I have these 3 trials. So what I can do now is to just put in a figure first, just to see whether there's any difference between these 3 trials. Okay, so there it is. I've just inserted a line graph. So it's looking pretty similar. Okay, if I change the scale, I might be able to see differences here. But okay, I'll try and do that. So how do I do that? Okay, yeah, so I just double click on the y-axis, and bounds, which is the maximum and minimum, I'm just going to start from 20 up to 70, and it scales right away. Okay, so maybe there's a slight difference in the orange one, and the orange one was
Yes.
Hey Miguel, was DT2. Okay, so I've also said that you guys, what you can do is to take an average of the 3 DTs. So I'm gonna write down DT average here. Okay, and what I'll do now is to calculate the average of these 3 trials here. And that's the average for split 1. Click and drag across, and that's my average for DT. Yep. So
hey Sam,
yep.
now that I can actually talk, so what I did, and you're probably right here, but we did the 2 graphs. So I'll just make sure Caroline's not confused. So we did DT and TT with VO2 to see whether they coincide. And then I also did another graph comparing heart rate and speed to see if they coincide at the same stage as the VO2 threshold.
So you're saying you've already done what I've explained?
They did it on 1 trial.
Yeah, on 1 trial. So I recall you saying that we could focus on 1 trial, but obviously not.
No, I think I was mistaken there. What I meant was you can compare between the 2 trial types if you take the average of the 3 DTs versus the average of the 3 TTs.
Alright, sorry Sam, can you just finish off that one example for us, please?
Okay.
The thresholds.
Alright.
That's what I'm an issue with.
That's okay. So this is for VO2. I'm just going to put that here so it's clear. Alright, so I've done dt. Now I'm going to do the same, exactly the same thing for tt. I've already calculated the averages here. I'm just going to copy and paste them. This is for tt1. Paste values. tt2. Copy, paste values. And tt3. Copy, paste values. Okay, and I'll label them tt1, tt2, tt3, and tt average. Okay, so I'm going to find an average equals average for TTs. Right? Enter. Click the little dot on the bottom right and drag across, and now I have the averages for all time trials. I'm just going to put them in bold so you guys can see it. Okay, so what I can do now is to make a figure just comparing DT average and TT average. So it's really clear what's the difference between these two trial types. Right? So I'll delete this and make a figure using just these two data lines. So I'm just selecting these two lines. You can just press down Control and click and drag the second line so that you only select these two lines. Insert line Graphql, and there you go. Okay, it looks very similar, but let's scale this up. So I'm gonna double click on the y-axis, change the starting VO2 to 20 because it seems it starts just above 20. Okay, and there we go.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
Okay, so now I have TT versus DT. Well, which one is which? I'm not sure. So let's have a look. Select data. Blue one is, which one's the blue one? DT. Blue.
And then the thresholds occur instead 2 and 7. We just have to make sure that we compare the differences.
Alright, so blue is DT. Okay, then I'm going to name them so that I don't get confused, and orange is TT. Alright, so TT, you can see that it starts a little bit lower, but it finishes off a bit higher at the end, so that's something interesting there. Okay, and then from this figure, then Miguel, you can go on to do what you've been talking about, looking at where the thresholds occur, at which point of the trial. Okay, so maybe VT1 is crossed somewhere at this point, and then VT2 is somewhere at this point.
No problem. Oh, yeah, because now we have DT and TT, and we don't need to put it on separate graphs because we have all three averages in one, which is a lot better.
Correct, yeah.
And Sam, do you mind checking out, I think it's slide 17?
Hang on, Sam, you finished this?
Yeah, are you finished with this yet? Hopefully.
Yeah, we're finished. Yep.
Yeah, because this makes sense now.
Oh, so now we got up to the point of where you can see VO2 coincide with.
Sorry, Caroline, you have a lot of feedback. I think you have another mic on. Okay. What was that?
So we can do exactly what we did with the graphs that we looked at before, with what you did now. So we can find
Yep.
if VO2 falls within the threshold. Okay, fantastic.
So you can do this to VO2, to heart rate, to speed, anything that you want to compare. Alright. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ben. I've got one more question.
Yep, sure.
Before you answer my question, Stacey asked a question that I think is important. So, would you recommend to keep all those graphs, or would you recommend to start from scratch?
Well, I don't think you need to start from scratch as long as you can, as long as you can use the format of the figures
Yeah.
to pop these new ones in. But really, it's up to you to what you find is easier. Maybe starting from scratch saves you time, or maybe modifying the current ones to this end stage is easier. It's up to you.
Right. And
Yeah.
one more question. Do you mind checking out slide 17, which is comparing heart rate and DT to see if they coincide with VO2 at the same stage, please?
Heart rate and speed.
Yeah, because I compared that with the VO2 thresholds to see whether or not they coincide at the same stage.
Okay.
Of exercise. And if it's good, great, and if it's not, do you mind giving me some feedback or giving us some feedback?
So I think you're gonna find that the where thresholds coincide would be very similar in terms of the split number. It would be either, you know, VT1 would be at about 2, and then VT2 would be at about 6 or 7. So
Yeah, it's right there.
if it's all the same, then there's no point showing 3 different figures on 3 different variables that show the same relationship. So maybe just choose one that's most important.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, so instead of going with heart rate and speed, maybe just choose heart rate or speed.
Yeah. Yeah. Just choose one. Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, we've already chosen heart rate, speed, blood lactate, and all that. And that means if I just choose heart rate, it means that I'm going to have to change the methods as well. That's all.
I think it's just omitting a little bit of the extra information that you have, right? You don't need to rewrite everything. The comparison is the same, but just not multiple times. Yeah. I think when you're presenting this comparison and when you're explaining what you're going to present, you have to make it really clear, because this is quite a complex comparison.
It is. We've found it that way.
Yeah.
Sam, one last question. So, in terms of, if you go back to the results and you look at, I know the results are only comparing DT1 and TT1, but with those graphs, if we change those graphs to look at the averages of distance and time, are we on the right track? For example, 16, 17, and 18, where Stacey talks about where heart rate starts to plateau and speed starts to become the same. Is that the right? That's the right thing that we're looking at. We just need to change it from one trial to an average. Yes.
Yes. I'm just looking at 14, 15, and 16 here. It seems that, well, all these figures you're talking about where VT1 and VT2 occurs, right?
Yeah.
So as I've said, that would be quite similar between the different variables, because there's a strong relationship between heart rate and VO2, which means they should reach VT1 and VT2 at about the same time. So you don't need to have, you know, so many figures talking about one relationship.
Okay, so we can still use all our variables. We just have to pick one to compare.
Pick one main one to focus on, and then you can mention that these other variables show a similar relationship. If that is so, but if the relationship is different, then it's worth talking about it separately.
Yeah. I did find that with DT1 heart rate, I think it's DT and TT heart rate, there was a massive difference with the ventilatory threshold with VO2.
Okay.
There was a difference of about 12 or 13 beats per minute, which I've mentioned.
Okay.
That's the only significant difference that I've found with it.
Yeah, okay. That's good.
Everything else coincided at the same stage in VO2 for both VT1.
That's good. Yeah, so there's something to talk about there.
But how am I going to actually put that in on the graphs? I'm sorry, it's status bid, but how do we go about it?
I think it's the same figure. You just need to find what's the average of all 3 trials, like I've just shown you on a spreadsheet, and replace your one DT1 figure with the average of DT.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Yeah.
That seems pretty straightforward.
So you still would have two lines. TT versus DT for heart rate, and then DT versus TT for speed, I think. Oh, VO2 and speed here. Yeah.
So we can still go with what we have. We just have to simplify it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought we had to change everything.
Just need to simplify so your audience actually understands what you're trying to compare.
Sure. No worries.
But does Stacy still you still have to redo the graphs though? Because you were talking about 13, slide 13 and 14, Sam, just before you and Mickey were talking, you said, you talked about 13 and 14.
You need to modify the figures so that you're not just comparing DT1 versus TT1, it's all DT average versus TT average. Yeah.
But those graphs are still relevant. We're not getting rid of it, just changing it to
Yeah.
as an average. Okay.
Yeah.
One last question, Sam. I don't want to ask another. So with Stacey mentioned that, would you recommend keeping the first? I think there's a graph with all the averages for all the different trials, and she asked a question whether or not we should keep that graph or not, as well as slides 13 and 14, which has information about pacing and peak speed and all that. Would you recommend also keeping that information?
Yeah, 13 and 14 is what we've been talking about that you need to modify, right? So you wouldn't get rid of those.
Yes.
Yeah, and which one was the one was it slide number 5 where you had participants VO2 max and VT1, VT2? Miguel, was that the first thing that you mentioned?
Slide 5. Slide 5 is the hypothesis. Slide 6 is the side of the demographics.
Yes, he's talking about your demographic slide.
Yeah. And in the demographic slide, there's VO2 max, VT1, VT2 data there as well.
Okay.
Because you said, I remember a while back you said that can go in the demographics as a representation of their VO2 max.
Okay, well, before we go through that, this is going to end in less than a minute, so we can restart the meeting and go on for a little bit more.
I actually thought that my microphone was actually completely dysfunctional. Like, didn't work at all. I can't believe I fixed it.
It's good that it's working, so if this gets cut off, we'll just restart the meeting. But
yeah, because I wanted to say a lot of things and I couldn't, and I got frustrated. That's why I was shaking my head.
Okay.
I was getting a little bit annoyed.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No worries, Miguel. Okay, so with the demographics, because you're only looking at, within the results, you're only looking at the average value of where VT1 to Yeah, that's okay. I don't have a lot of time, so I think we'll just go through that last question.
Yeah, I knew what you were going to say before I cut you off, I think.
Yep.
Just correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
So with the demographics, I think you wanted me to just compare VO2 max average, not VT1, VT2.
So you need the averages of all three variables. So you don't have single values for each of the participants. You take the average of the 14 participants for VO2 max, VT1 and VT2.
Okay, okay, average of, okay, sure.
So you have one value for VO2 max, one value for VT1, one value for VT2, and then all the averages of the 14 participants. Just like you have done for age, height, weight.
I'm confused. Sorry, Sam.
So you have you have the average of 64.05, right, for VO2 max. So just do the same for VT1 and VT2.
Oh, sure, no worries.
Yeah.
And then put it in a bar chart or a graph or whatever.
You can put it in a bar chart if you want, or either that or in a table.
Alright, no problem.
Yeah. Were there any other questions?
Yeah, there was another question. So with the last, so slide 17, I'm not sure if you're on it.
Yeah.
We are. So what I've done here, now I can explain it properly, is you see on the previous ones I've compared VT1, VT2 with VO2 for TT1, TT, so DT1 and TT1. But what you want me to do is obviously the averages over all the trials with that one graph instead of two, and then with 17 you want me, so you want Stacey to do the same with this and compare speed over all the trials as well as heart rate.
You need to be consistent, correct?
Coincides at the same stage with VT1, VO2, and all that.
Yeah, you need to be consistent with how you present the results. So it all has to be the averages of DT and averages of TT.
No worries.
Yeah.
And then, what was another question I was going to ask? I completely forgot. With these, oh, that's right, because you told us to only focus on one variable instead of speed and heart rate, because they have very similar results apart from DT1 heart rate.
Was there a question there?
Now, I think I was just making a statement, but the question would be, would I, like with these, I've made a few boxes just to represent the information, but would I, instead of just going heart rate, TT, DT, speed, DT, TT, maybe focus on, would it be okay to focus on both still, or choose one over the other, as an average over all trials?
Oh, sorry, come again.
Would I have to put heart rate and speed as an average for all trials and put them on a graph, or focus on either one or the other?
That depends on your comparisons. If you wanted to compare between heart rate and speed, then you put them on the same figure. But if you wanted to talk about them separately, you just wanted to look at the differences in VT2 between the trial conditions, and then after that look at the differences in speed between the two conditions, then that would be two separate figures.
Okay, alright, sure. The purpose of this figure is to see whether or not heart rate and speed coincides at the same stage as VO2.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
the purpose of this figure.
Then you would have it on the same figure then.
Heart rate, DT and TT did not coincide at the same split due to large differences, and I said the difference. And then I also did speed and DT did coincide and all that. So I just explained what occurs, and then I pointed to the VO2.
Yeah, so the way that you have this set up is good, it's correct. Yeah, I wouldn't separate them then.
Okay, so do you think... Oh, okay, so you would leave it the way it is.
Yeah, but you do need to calculate the averages for DT and averages for TT.
Yeah. That's the only difference.
That's the only thing, yeah.
This graph, all it has is, it says speed TT DT, but this is only for one trial.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so that's okay. Sweet.
Yeah.
So I don't really need to change much, just averages.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I said a lot of words then, that could have been simplified.
That's okay. Alright, I think, well, I'm not sure whether the rest are coming back, so yeah, just email me. Maybe Caroline wants to email me if she has any questions, but
I've got one more question before, I'm so sorry, I'm full of questions.
that's okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
slide 11, would we keep this graph? Is this table important? Because there's a blue is here saying, ask Sam if table's relevant, or just stick to 12.1. Obviously not.
Yeah, so I've put my answer there as well. I'll just compare the average of DTs to
Oh, you had.
TTs.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's what you're showing in your figures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright. Yeah, Stacy, everything is
I
recorded,
understand, but
so I'll post the video up and you can watch all that.
yeah, it makes sense to me. But I just think that I have to explain it probably to the rest of the group because it's quite a bit of work, you know, you want 4 trials. Because I had no idea. I thought we could just compare DT1 and TT1.
Yeah.
Alright.
Alright, all good? All good?
It's all good for me.
Yeah, just make sure that Stacy knows that this is recorded and she can watch it later. I'll post this up on... I'll send you guys a link once it's up.
Alright, sure.
Alright? Okay guys.
Thanks,
No worries, have a good one. Yep, see you later.